Hello and welcome to another tutorial from BrainGym. If you want to avoid missing out on more free tutorials like this one, don't forget to hit the subscribe button below, and as always, feel free to put your questions in the comment section. Without further ado, let's get into today's video. Today, you're going to learn how to complete the square to solve quadratic equations like this one. I'm going to show you a simple 4-step process to complete the square, and there's 4 steps involved. The steps are 1. Move, 2. Halve, 3. Add, and 4. Solve. I'll show you how to use these steps in this example. Let's start with step number 1, move. All we want to do is move the constant term, which is this plus 6 in this case, because it doesn't have an x next to it, to the other side of the equation. So when I move the plus 6 to the other side, it becomes a minus 6. So that's step number 1 finished. Step number 2 is halve. We want to write a bracket, square the bracket, and inside we want to write x plus half of this value here. So half of 10 is 5, which means we just write x plus 5 inside the bracket. The rest of the equation remains unchanged. The next step is add. So we want to add a value to the right-hand side of the equation, just here. And the value that we want to add is simply 5 squared, because that's what we wrote in the bracket. So 5 squared is 25, so we can just write plus 25 on the right-hand side of the equation. So that is step number 3 finished. The final step is solve. So we just need to simplify and solve this equation that we've now got. Negative 6 plus 25 is 19. After that, we want to remove the square on the left-hand side. So we take the square root of both sides, and we end up with x plus 5 equals plus or minus square root of 19. So you need to remember the plus or minus sign because it indicates that either positive root 19 or negative root 19 will satisfy this equation. And finally, we just need to move the plus 5 to the other side. And it becomes a minus 5 when you move it. And we've got our two solutions now. X equals root 19 minus 5, or x equals minus root 19 minus 5. Now let's move on to the next worked example. So again, we'll start with step number 1, which is move. We just want to move the constant term, which in this case is 4, to the other side. So the plus 4 becomes a minus 4 when we move it to the right-hand side. Step number 2 is halve. So again, we just write out a bracket, square the bracket, and inside we write x plus half of this value, which is 8. So half of 8 is 4, so we just write the 4 there. And the rest of the equation just remains unchanged. And we can move on to step 3, which is add. So now we want to add to this equation on the right-hand side 4 squared. So 4 squared is 16, so I can just go ahead and write plus 16 to complete this third step, which is add. So finally, we can go on and solve this equation. So minus 4 plus 16 is equal to 12. Then I'm going to take the square root of both sides. So we remove the square on the left and end up with plus or minus root 12 on the right. Finally, I just want to move the plus 4 to the other side of the equation, and we are left with x equals plus or minus root 12 minus 4. So I'm just going to write out the two solutions separately. So those are our two solutions. If you wanted to, you could write them out as decimals and round them, but I'm going to leave them as they are. Now let's move on to the final example. In this case, we're looking at x squared minus 20x minus 6 equals 0. So again, step number 1 to start off with. We're just going to move the minus 6 to the other side. And remember, when it moves, it's going to change sign, so it becomes a positive 6. Step number 2 is halve. So again, we just write out our bracket, square the bracket, and inside we want to write x plus half of this value here. So half of negative 20 is negative 10, which means we want to write a negative 10 inside. So in this case, it's going to be a minus sign, not a plus inside the bracket, because, as I said, half of minus 20 is minus 10. The rest of the equation remains unchanged, as usual. And now we're ready to do step number 3, which is add. So we want to add in here a number, and that number is going to be this value squared. So 10 squared is just 100. So I just write plus 100. And now we can just do step number 4, which is solve. So again, I'm just going to simplify on the right hand side. 6 plus 100 is 106. Next, I want to take the square root of both sides. We need the plus or minus sign before the square root here to show that either positive root 106 or minus root 106 will satisfy the equation. And finally, we just need to move the negative 10 to the other side, so we're left with x by itself. And our final solution, we've got two solutions as always. The first one is root 106 minus 10, and the second one is minus root 106 minus 10. And that's all there is to it. So hopefully you found this simple 4-step process for completing the square useful. Be sure to leave your comments, questions, and suggestions in the comment section below. And if you like this video, please don't forget to leave a thumbs up and hit subscribe to avoid missing out on more content from us. See you next time.